Hello, my lovelies, and welcome to episode 52 of the Prosperous Yogini podcast. Yes, next week, my podcast will be 1 year old, and I am having a party, and you are invited. In the show notes, you'll see the link to the party invitation. Please do sign up. I'm inviting you to join me live next Thursday, the 15th of June at 12 p.m. for an hour. I have sat in this cupboard for 52 weeks, spoken by myself for 12 months. The odd person's come in and chatted to me, I know, but largely by myself for 12 months. And next week, I'm inviting you to join me as I record my podcast. It's going to be a Q&A call podcast. I need you to submit your questions in advance. I will be answering all your questions, but they will need to be submitted in advance. So even if you can't attend live or you're like, Amy, it's not my sort of party. Thanks, but no thanks. That's okay, right? Sign up, submit your question relating to teaching yoga or the business of running your yoga business, and I will answer your question. I'm going to endeavor to do all of them within the hour slot that I've got. So that's next week. This week, I'm super excited about this week's episode. It's a request episode. I want to say thank you for all the requests that have been coming in. Huge apologies that I've not got round to doing your request episodes yet. I had quite a lot planned for the podcast and they have all been noted and I'm now getting round to them. And this one actually only came in last week, very, very recent, but it's so topical that this is today's topic of the podcast: teaching yoga outside. I am very fortunate. I live in Cornwall, 5-minute walk from one of the best surfing breaks in the UK, and we have had glorious sunshine, warm weather. I say at last in the UK, summer has finally arrived. And it is perfectly reasonable for you to be thinking, oh, maybe I'll take my yoga classes outside. Maybe it'd be nice to teach them outside yoga. So in this podcast today, I'm going to share with you some logistics that are worth thinking about if you're going to run a class outside. And I do have to share with you some of my experiences and stories of running outside yoga, because I've had some funny, very funny things happen to me. And they're important, actually, these stories, because if you're going to go and do outside yoga, you have to go with the mindset of this is going to be an adventure. There are things beyond my control. I'm okay if I need to cancel last minute because of the weather, during the class because of the weather. And I'm also okay if members of the public or two big, hairy, smelly golden retrievers that have been in the sea come into my class and roll on yoga mats. Yes, that is one of the things. I wasn't even going to share that story with you. It just popped into my brain. I was teaching outside yoga, and two beautiful, big, hairy, smelly. They'd been in the sea. They were wet. They were sandy. Golden retrievers came into the class. I was so excited to see all these people. So excited to see all these yoga mats. The owners were trying to retrieve them, but it was, these golden retrievers had other ideas. Sand and wet on the mat. We did obviously have to pause the class. Some people did have to turn their mats over. It was all good, but you have to be relaxed about it. You can't be like, oh no, my class is being interrupted by golden retrievers. You have to be relaxed about it, because you're outside and you're in a public space. So let's get on to the logistics first of all. Where are you going to teach outside yoga? Now, yoga, it doesn't need to be a perfectly flat, smooth ground, but a smoothish, flattish ground is useful. The spot that I, in most recent years, have taught in is this beautiful garden overlooking the beach in St Agnes. It's an absolutely stunning spot. It is a bit rocky, so we do have to position our mats so people aren't sitting or stepping on rocks. There is also fox and badger poo. So the first thing I have to do when I get up to this spot is have a check around for animal poo, and take a few doggy poo bags with me and pick up the poo. In Cornwall, obviously, some people use the beach and the sand. That's fine. I absolutely hate doing yoga on the beach and I hate sand on my mat. But I know there's quite a few teachers local to me that do lovely outside yoga classes. Of course, there are other settings, other places where yoga in the park, yoga, just, a public space. But what you've got to pay attention to is that word public space. First of all, you have to know it's a public space. That means, yes, you can go and use it and teach yoga on it, but so can members of the public walk through your yoga class. Dog walkers can walk through your yoga class. It isn't a space, if you're using a public space, it isn't a space that you can contain as yours while you're running the class. Also, not all public spaces, and I say that in inverted commas, not all public spaces are free spaces that you can just rock up and teach on. So that, I'll give you the example of the garden that I teach overlooking St Agnes. It is a public space. There's a public right of way footpath that leads right through the garden on the coastal path. So I have to be okay, by the way, when I teach yoga here, that there will be ramblers, walkers walking past my yoga class. I just have to be okay with it because it's the nature of the venue. Beautiful space, but it is on a public right of way. It's actually, the garden is maintained by a charity, and I can't just rock up and teach a yoga on this space, this garden. I have to ask permission, seek permission from the charity, and I actually I make a donation of £10 when I teach yoga to the garden charity. So don't assume that every space is free. Is it owned by the council? Is it owned by the parish council? Is there an access issue? So for example, some beaches in Cornwall, there are landowners that own access to the beach. So if you're going onto their land effectively to make money, to run a business, then they will want to know about this and may charge you for that right. Or for example, on Perranporth Beach, where I live, parish councils, to sort of like stop there being lots of surf schools, lots of yoga schools, lots of businesses using the beach, you have to seek permission from the parish council to run a business from the beach, to run an activity that is a business from the beach. So don't assume everywhere is free. Some places are free. Some, I know that there are spots, teachers using spots where there doesn't appear to be a landowner. It's not owned by the council, the parish council. And in that case, if you've done your due diligence and you've researched, does anyone own this land? Seemingly no, and it looks like a safe, good spot with relatively flat ground with relatively safe access, then I'm like, go for it. There is a place actually in Perranporth that overlooks the beach that isn't owned by anyone, and there are yoga teachers that are using it, and there's a fitness instructor that uses it as well. So there's several users, and they've just collectively negotiated and navigated who's on it what. But this is what you've got to know: it's a public space, so another yoga teacher could rock up to that space and teach a class at the same time. And these aren't things that happen, but these are things to be aware of. So if you've spotted a piece of land that you think, oh, I'd like to do yoga on that, you've got to find out, does anyone own it? Do I need to get permission to teach a class on this land and run my business from it? Do I need to check in with any other users and be respectful to people that may be already using this spot? It doesn't mean just because there are other yoga teachers on the spot that you can't. I mean, if there are other yoga classes happening on this plot of land, great. It's a sign that it's good for yoga and there's room for us all, but just being respectful. And then worth just checking in with your insurance. Does anything change in relating to teaching outside? And also that risk assessment. What's the access like? What's the parking like? Just those little things, because you're taking people into a less controlled environment. Like a studio is a very controlled environment. We're taking people now into a less controlled environment. Generally speaking, styles of yoga that work better outside are those more physical practices, slower practices like yin yoga. Generally speaking, in the UK, it's never that warm, and we can get cold on these very floor-based practices. Also, I'm thinking like the access to the garden where I teach yoga is up some steep steps. So this is definitely lending itself to that vinyasa style yoga class. Doesn't mean that you can't teach a more gentler style, a more beginner style class outside, but you just do need to think about parking, access, and who is this class for. Then equipment. You don't really want to be lugging lots of equipment all about the place anyway. You're not in your studio with all your beautiful props. So I am like minimal props for outside yoga. I mean, I'm not even fussed if there's not blocks, right? Mats, we just need a mat, right? And ask your students to bring a mat, and maybe few mats provided if they haven't got one. Then with your booking system, like I am all for consistent charging in a way that encourages consistent income, but blocks don't necessarily work for outside yoga. There was one very famous year when I taught outside yoga. I did one class, and that was the only class of the season, because every other week that I planned to do outside yoga, it rained. Yes, it was a bad year in Cornwall. So you have to be prepared. So this is where actually I probably would do drop in. I would see your outside classes as pop up outside class, drop in price. And then if possible, I still would avoid payment on the day. But if you are taking payment on the day and you're asking people for cash, are you asking for an amount that you'll need change? Are you asking for £2? Are you asking for £8? And people are going to turn up with £10. You've got to give them £2 change in cash. Nobody has cash anymore. So if you are asking for payment in the day, I would really recommend you get something like an iZettle or a Sum Up machine. And then if you are doing that, does it work? Like that, an iZettle machine would not work in the garden in St Agnes because there's no signal. So it's still so much better to take online payment in advance, get people to secure their place so you know that people are coming. And also, are you teaching in a space like my garden in St Agnes can only take 10 people? So spaces were limited. So I did have to take booking in advance, but I also had to be completely okay with, if it rains, cancelling the class and either carrying credit over to the next week or offering people a refund. If I haven't run the class because of weather, then I have to give people their money back. So yeah, outside yoga on the surface of it is like, oh, this will be lovely. But there is sometimes these logistics where you've set up the class, you've advertised the class, you've taken payment for the class is full, and it is raining. And all your efforts result in you having to give people their money back or saying, oh, let's try it next week, fingers crossed. None of these actions, these endeavors are ever lost. Outside yoga is a great way to get yourself outside and get yourself visible. It's a form of marketing. People will be like, oh, look, there's a yoga teacher. Oh, that looks nice. Or someone might come to your outside yoga class because they want to do yoga outside. They haven't been to you in the studio space. They love what you're offering. And all of a sudden you've got a long-term client coming to your in-person classes, or you teach a lovely outside yoga class and you're like, oh, I'm running a retreat here in a month's time. Would you like to come? Yes. Or if you live like me in an area of the country where you have a lot of holiday makers during the seasonal mums, then you can also offer classes for holiday makers. And this is something in our mentorship program. The guys that are in my mentorship program, we're talking about this seasonal rhythm to our business. Now, it's not a given that in June, July, August, your class numbers will drop off, but it isn't uncommon to notice that when the weather gets hot and the days get longer, some people choose to go outside or go on holiday. How dare they, eh? Go on holiday or, you know, do other stuff in the summer months. Now, guys, this isn't for the yoga teachers. This is for any yoga practitioner listening. You want your yoga teacher is for life. If you want your yoga teacher there in the autumn, in the winter, when it's raining, you need to be there when it's sunny. Okay, and yoga teachers, you need to be charging in a way that is encouraging consistent income regardless of the time of year. But aside from that, people do get busy in the summer. People do go on holiday in the summer. So it's worth thinking about in terms of our income. How can I navigate that? So either save some money, like from the autumn and winter, so you can take yourself through any leaner months, or think about seasonal offers, outside yoga retreats, for example. And this is something that I'm working with the guys in my mentorship program. And if you're like, damn, why did I not sign up to Amy's mentorship program? Well, this is the first time I've heard about it. Add your name to the wait list. I will put it in the links. You can come in, my darling, the next time the doors are open. So that's kind of it really on the logistics. I like, go for it, have a sense of fun. You learn a lot. So I'm going to share with you a couple of stories from teaching outside yoga. I shared the golden retriever one. The next one is, this was probably from this year where the weather just seemed to like really not be on my side. And I I only managed one class, cancelled loads because of the weather. And in Cornwall, we get a lot of like micro climates. So it can look okay, it can look sunny somewhere, and then you head down to the coast and it's covered in sea mist. Anyway, it was looking like a bit iffy. And this is the thing, if you teach outside yoga, you start to get really good at reading the weather. It was looking a bit iffy, but it looking like it could rain or it could not rain. It could be okay or it could not be okay. So I said to everyone, look, let's just do the class. So we turned up, and the sea mist, first of all, is in St Agnes. So if you've never experienced sea mist, basically it's grey and cold. You're doing yoga in a cloud, and you just need to go up the road away from the coast and the sun is out. So that's the first thing. And the sea mist is also a little bit damp. So it's a little bit damp, a little bit cold. So we turned up, but it wasn't raining at this point. So I was like, it'll be all right. We'll do some yoga. I'll keep you moving. Oh my God, I'm just thinking of another story. There's going to be a few stories. Okay, I'm having outside yoga flashbacks. So we started doing the class, and I didn't get people sitting still for very long because we were cold. So I just started getting people moving through some vinyasas, and it started to rain. So I have a technique when it starts to rain in outside yoga. I bring people into child's pose because they can't feel it as much, where I take a moment to assess the situation. Okay, and now it's not just raining, it is pouring. I've got a picture of us. I will try and dig it out and add it into the show notes on my website. It is pouring with rain. We're like now wet through to our pants. Okay, we're not doing yoga anymore. We are now laughing. Our yoga mats are wet. We are wet. We are now laughing. And it literally was this: quick, abandon ship, roll up your mats, let's go like mid class, get out of here. When does that ever happen in the studio, right? We did a quick selfie of all of us just completely wet, laughing. Everyone went home. Of course, I can't charge people for this class, so you have to let things go. Now, the next story has just popped into my mind. There's going to be 3. It's like, learn from Amy. What time of year and what time of day should I start doing outside yoga? So I view May, like May is the start of summer, right? No, it can be really cold in May, can't it? And you can get frost. So first time I taught outside yoga ever, I'm going to do a 7 a.m. class in May. And it was absolutely freezing on the ground. And I didn't have any socks. I had my flip-flops because it's summer and it's Cornwall. I didn't have any socks, and I'm not doing the yoga either. And I got colder and colder, and I kept saying to the guys at the class, I was like, is everyone okay? Oh, we're a little bit cold, but we're okay. It's beautiful. We'll keep going. My feet were so cold. I was taught a 7 a.m. class, and then I went over to the studio in Agnes to teach a 9 a.m. class. And I remember getting the electric heater and just sitting by it for 20 minutes to defrost myself. I had never been so cold in my life, and that was the first time I taught outside yoga. So I was like, note to self, don't start that early in the morning in May. Okay, if there's any rain in the forecast, call it off. And honestly, there's been times it's so hard when it's iffy, like when you're deciding, should I run this class or not for the weather? When it's beautiful sunshine, easy, yes, definitely on. When it's rain forecasted, heavy rain forecasted, you're like, no, it's definitely off. When it's this really annoying, like, you know, on the BBC weather app, grey cloud, possible participation, or grey cloud with 1 drop of rain, 30% chance of rain, you're like, oh, it might be all right. They are the worst. It is so hard to make the call there, and you're doomed if you do and you're doomed if you don't, because there's been plenty of times where I've said, sorry guys, no class, and it didn't rain, it would have been totally fine. Or I've cancelled the class in the morning and by the evening the sun's come out. And I don't know, guys, if you don't live in Cornwall, if you're more inland, I don't know if this is more particular to the coast, because we get like, you know, mini microclimates and weather systems coming through off the sea, but I found this to be really common. It's like, it's so hard sometimes to make the judgment call on the weather. Okay, so frozen feet, golden retrievers, pouring with rain to the point where we've got wet through to our pants. All of this has been so much fun. The last story is will stay in my mind forever, this one. So it was in the evening, lovely, beautiful summer's evening, that it's really warm, and actually it was fine because it was about 6 o'clock, but this is what I mean about considering the temperature and considering in your risk assessment, am I teaching in a sun trap? And you might be like, oh, beautiful, this is a beautiful sunny spot, but is it too hot? Because if you're asking people to be in the sun for an hour, and they should be wearing sun cream, for example. So that's just one of those things you've got to think about. Anyway, it was a lovely sunny evening, really warm, and the type of person coming into class was, that surfer type person. We were wearing shorts. It was hot. Shorts, t-shirts, crop tops, leggings. We were all dressed appropriately, but it was the summer, and a lovely class, absolutely beautiful class. And I'd brought everyone down to Shavasana, and I'm sitting there thinking, oh, this is wonderful. Now, as you know about the garden where I teach yoga, it is on a public footpath. People could actually walk through the class to get to. I've just thought of another story. There are, how many have we got to? 4. There's one more coming. Someone could walk through the class, but there's also people could walk above it and look down from it. And this young man, who I don't think, sending him lots of love, don't think mentally was too great, had come up the top and clocked the fact that there I am, sat, looking over all of my students led into Shavasana, some of them sunbathing, it's beautiful weather, in their shorts. It's quiet. I'm really trying to set the scene here. It's quiet. You can hear the waves lapping, the bird singing. And I hear quite very, very clearly, as does everyone else, pervert yoga teacher. Oi, pervert yoga teacher. Oi. Yes, this gentleman was shouting at me while my students were in Shavasana. Oi, pervert yoga teacher. Because obviously it looked like I was staring at people who weren't wearing huge amount of clothing at the end of their yoga class. What do you do? What do you do in that situation other than roll with it? Of course, I didn't engage myself with the young man. He was a good distance away from me, but his voice carried and it was very clear what he was saying. Shavasana at this point, obviously, now has to come to an end because we are all giggling. So I bring everyone out, and that is the end of the class. But these are the things that can happen. The last thing that can happen, and here's a great example of navigating teaching in a public space that you don't own. So there's the garden, there's a public pathway that people can walk through it, and just at the end of the garden, up a few steps, is a ledge where people can sit. And I turned up to teach yoga one night, and people were sitting having a barbecue and a smoke. And actually, because I have to pay for the space, it worked out quite well. I was able to go up to them and say, look, I'm about to run a yoga class in this space. I actually paid the garden charity for the use of this space. Would you be happy to move elsewhere? Now, fortunately, these were really reasonable people, didn't want their evening piece ruined by a load of yogis doing yoga next to them, and they moved. But they could have quite easily chosen not to move. And certainly if it was a public space that no one owned and I wasn't paying for it, I could have still asked them to move, but I wouldn't have had the leverage of, I pay for the space. I work with the garden to use the space in this evening. So these are all the things that you have to consider. The other place that I have taught outside in, which worked really well and I had more control, was there is a lovely hotel just outside of St Agnes, which has large grounds, lovely river running through it, and I used their garden for some time as well. That did work out. It wasn't quite as a beautiful setting as the sea, and parking was a challenge, navigating around the hotel guests that got priority. So what I'm trying to say to you is, outside yoga is never going to be perfect. Outside yoga is going to be full of learning experiences and things that are beyond our control. Isn't that a great place to put ourselves in as yoga teachers, because we like to control. We like to think we've got this class plan. It's going to go like this, and these people are going to turn up, and I'm going to get these people to do these things. And you go outside and you're like, you know what? We're just going to rock up. We're going to hope the weather's going to play ball. We're going to enjoy the fact that we're outside in nature and move our bodies and breathe. And if you embrace that, and you're also completely okay with the fact that you might have to cancel your class, then you will really enjoy teaching outside yoga. If you don't, I kind of get it. I don't like teaching on the sand. You might imagine that I would be setting up classes on the beaches. No, nothing annoys me more than doing yoga and just being covered in sand while I'm practicing. And actually, sand's quite a difficult surface to practice yoga on. But I do know loads of teachers that teach outside on beaches and have beautiful classes that people love. So we're all unique. But give outside yoga a go, absolutely. But do get really, really clear on your permissions, your rights around the land, and be like really open to the possibility of things not going according to plan. All right, my lovelies, thank you. I can't remember who it was who asked about outside yoga, but thank you. Great topic. I'm always open to requests. Please send them in. I'm going to remind you one more time. Sign up to my party. It's free event. I'm offering you a free Q&A call. I'm offering to answer one question about your yoga business or teaching yoga. Please do take me up on the offer. I've got lots of it. I mean, I love all my episodes. Lots of episodes that are my favorite. One of my favorite ones is very, very similar off the back of the Profitable Yoga Business roadmap that I did in January, which, by the way, is coming back next January. Anyway, I had some great questions come in, and I just took your questions and asked them in the Q&A. I spoke to myself for about 55 minutes. One of my favorite episodes, because I really felt like I was giving good value to you guys, and I couldn't help but chuckle thinking, yeah, this is me. I can sit in this small cupboard, talk to myself for 55 minutes. All right, my darlings, I will see you all next week for the podcast party. And if you had missed the opportunity to come into the mentorship program, or it's the first you've heard about it and you're like, Amy, I need you in my life and on my team, please add your name to the wait list. Doors are reopening in the autumn. Slight little change to the offer. Actually, really excited about that, but that's all to come. All right, my darlings, I'll see you all next week.